The research ship Aurora drifted through the quiet edge of space, far from any planet or station. It was meant to be a routine journey, a supply run and data collection trip between human and Arlen space. Most of the crew were scientists and engineers. They worked in calm shifts, running tests and logging reports. Nothing unusual ever happened here. Liam had been working in the maintenance bay, his hands covered in grease, his focus fixed on a damaged energy coil. He liked quiet work, machines that made sense and systems that did what they were told. He didn't enjoy talking much, especially when his stepfamily came up. His father had married an Arlen woman 5 years ago, and since then Liam had gained a stepsister from another species. Her name was Mira. Mira was an Arlen biologist, tall and calm with skin that shimmered faintly in the ship's lights. Her kind were not like humans. They breathed different air, their hearts beat slower, and their eyes could see into spectrums human eyes could not. Still, she had joined this mixed crew because her research could help humans grow food in alien soil. Liam respected that, but he never knew what to say to her. Every time they spoke, it felt like two planets trying to share the same orbit. That day, the Aurora moved near the outer ring of a dying star. The crew had been warned about solar activity, but no one expected it to be serious. The readings were normal when the shift began. Then, without warning, the alarm started. The ship shuddered. Red lights filled the corridor. A low voice spoke through the speakers, calm but urgent. Warning. Solar flare detected. Shield failure in progress. All crew to safe zones. Liam dropped his tools and ran to the nearest door. He tapped the comms, but no one answered. Static filled the air. The hum of the engines grew uneven, then faded. The lights flickered again. He looked down the long corridor and saw Mira stepping out of the biolab, her hands gripping a glowing device. She looked toward him with a mix of surprise and fear. What happened? She asked. Her voice carried a soft echo like wind through glass. The storm hit early, Liam said. We need to reach the core shelter. Before they could move, a violent shock ran through the ship. Both of them fell to the floor as the gravity field flickered. The emergency doors sealed one after another, closing in like walls of steel. The final barrier slid down between them and the main corridor. The sign above read, Lockdown engaged. Mira tried to override it using her wrist scanner, but the system rejected her input. The control lines are dead, she said quietly. Liam stood up and looked around. The two of them were trapped in the biolab. He could already feel the hum of the air filters slowing. The lab was built for research, not survival. It had limited air, no food, and only one emergency generator. He exhaled slowly and checked his wrist display. Power levels are dropping fast. The storm must have damaged the reactors. Mira looked toward the glass window. Beyond it, the endless dark of space pulsed with streaks of gold and blue light. The solar storm was in full force now. Waves of energy washed over the hull, making the metal groan. The radiation will pass in about 6 hours, she said, reading her own datapad. But if the oxygen runs out before that, we will not make it. Liam moved toward the power console. Then we fix it. He worked quickly, connecting spare wires, adjusting circuits, and checking the emergency grid. Mira helped him by holding the light and reading out system codes. The two worked in silence for several minutes. The hum of damaged machinery filled the air. At last, Liam spoke. You worked on these systems before, right? Yes, Mira said, nodding. But they were not designed for complete isolation. If the main grid is gone, we can only slow the loss. That's better than nothing. She looked at him for a moment, her glowing eyes calm but serious. You always think you can fix everything. He gave a short laugh. That's what engineers do. Another tremor shook the floor. One of the side panels burst open, releasing a cloud of smoke. The room lights dimmed again, then stabilized. Mira coughed and waved her hand. That was the auxiliary unit. I'll check it, Liam said. He knelt by the panel, coughing through the smoke, and saw burnt wiring inside. He replaced a few connectors with spare cables from his belt. It wasn't perfect, but enough to restart the backup grid. A soft blue glow filled the lab again. Mira exhaled in relief. You did it. Not yet, Liam said. We just bought some time. He opened a small communication line to the bridge, but the signal was dead. Static hissed through the speaker. They were alone. Mira sat on one of the benches, adjusting the temperature regulator on her suit. Her species needed a cooler environment than humans. Without power, the lab's temperature would rise quickly. If it gets too warm, she said, I might start losing strength. Liam nodded. I'll keep the coolant line running as long as possible. They both fell quiet for a while. The sound of distant rumbling filled the silence. Liam checked the door panel again, hoping for any sign of release, but it was locked tight. He looked toward Mira. "You don't look worried," she smiled faintly. "I have learned that fear does not help. Logic does. That's one way to see it," he said, half smiling. "But sometimes fear keeps you awake." Mira tilted her head. "Maybe, but I think teamwork keeps us alive." Her calm voice eased the tension in the room. For the first time, Liam noticed how steady she remained even under pressure. It reminded him of his father's words. The Arlen think slowly but act wisely. He had never paid attention before, but now he understood. Hours passed slowly. They managed to reroute the air filters to half power. The temperature began to climb, but still within safe limits. Liam sat down by the wall, his hands tired. Mira offered him a bottle of stored water from her research pack. "Thank you," he said. "You look like you need it," she replied gently. He smiled slightly. "You always sound like you're teaching a class." "Habit," she said. "On my world, we share lessons even during danger. It keeps the mind steady." He nodded. "Maybe that's not a bad idea." The two began to talk while checking systems between intervals. Mira told him about her home planet, a world of floating forests, cold mist, and seas of silver leaves. She described how Arlen children learn to read light patterns before learning words. Liam listened, fascinated. Her voice carried a kind of peace he rarely felt in space. In return, he told her about his first time fixing a ship engine with his father. He talked about his dream to design ships that could cross between human and Arlen zones safely, without the need for translators or complex air systems. Mira listened with interest, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "You care about building bridges," she said after a while. "Even if you do not say it." Liam looked down. "Maybe. I just like when things work." "That is the same thing," she said quietly. Before he could reply, another burst of energy shook the ship. A new alarm sounded, soft but urgent. Mira checked the display. "The outer hull near this sector is unstable. We must reinforce the pressure locks." Liam jumped to his feet. "I can patch it from here if we reroute power." Together they moved to the secondary console. Sparks flew from one corner, lighting their faces in orange glow. Mira's hands moved quickly, typing in Arlen code while Liam worked on human commands. The system resisted for a moment, then accepted the hybrid sequence. The pressure lock strengthened and the alarm went silent. "Nice work," Liam said, breathing hard. "We did it together," she answered. The silence that followed was not tense anymore. The hum of the ship returned, softer and steadier. They both sat down again, catching their breath. The storm outside began to fade. The blue and gold light through the window turned to a calmer red hue. It was still dangerous, but the worst was passing. Liam leaned back against the wall and looked at Mira. "You think the others are all right?" "I believe so," she said. "The shelters are strong. Humans are strong, too." He nodded slowly. "I hope so." She looked toward him, her expression gentle. "We will survive this, Liam." He met her eyes. For the first time, he believed it. Outside, the last wave of the solar storm rippled across space, painting the ship in light. Inside the sealed lab, two lives from different worlds worked side by side, not as strangers, but as family bound by shared survival. For the first time since the storm began, the Aurora felt alive again. The storm had passed, but the danger was not over. The ship Aurora floated in silence, its engines quiet and its main lights still dark. Only the emergency systems glowed faintly inside the biolab, where Liam and Mira sat beside the console. The air was thin and warm, and the hum of the backup power came and went like a slow heartbeat. Liam checked the readings again. The oxygen levels were still falling. He rubbed his forehead, trying to stay calm. "We have maybe 4 hours before the air gets too thin," he said. Mira adjusted the small temperature device beside her. "The cooling unit is also losing power," she replied. "My body will not hold well if the temperature rises more." Liam looked around the lab, thinking fast. The walls were lined with Arlen research tools, small crystal containers, plant samples, and light jars that glowed with natural energy. Most of it was useless for power, but maybe not all. "You said these crystals store energy," he said, pointing to the glowing jars. "Yes," she nodded. "They are from Arlen coral. They collect light and heat for research. Then we can use them," Liam said, moving closer. "If I connect them to the backup grid, maybe we can give the life support another hour or two." Mira hesitated. They are delicate. If they crack, the energy may release too fast. He smiled faintly. So I'll be careful. For the next half hour, Liam worked on connecting the crystal jars to the ship's wiring. Mira stood beside him, handing him tools and adjusting the current flow with her glowing fingers. The air grew warmer and both of them began to sweat, but they kept working. At last, the soft lights flickered and steadied. The air filters hummed again. Cool air began to flow through the vents. Mira sighed in relief. You did it again. Liam wiped his forehead. No, we did it. Without your light jars, we would be gasping right now. She gave a small smile. You humans never stop fixing things. And you, Arlen, never stop reminding us when we break them, he said lightly. For a moment, they both laughed. It was the first real sound of peace since the storm began, but it didn't last long. A soft beep came from the wall display. The ship's internal map blinked with red symbols. Liam's smile faded as he looked closer. There's a pressure breach in Corridor 6, he said. That's just one level below us. Mira's eyes narrowed. If it spreads upward, this section could lose pressure too. He nodded. We'll need to seal it from here. The ship's repair drones were offline, so they had to do it manually. Liam opened the maintenance panel and began linking the pressure controls to the lab's small power source. If we can close the bulkheads before the leak reaches the upper decks, we can save oxygen for the rest of the ship, he said. Mira moved beside him. Show me what to do. He explained quickly, and she followed his lead, pressing sequences into the Arlen interface. Their fingers moved in rhythm, human and alien working as one team. The system fought back, lights flashing red, but after a long minute the screen turned green. Bulkhead sealed, she read aloud. Liam leaned back, breathing hard. That was close. Mira looked at the display again. It seems the damage to the ship is greater than we thought. The solar storm might have torn through the outer panels. He nodded slowly. The hull might hold for now, but if another flare comes, we won't survive without the reactor. There was silence for a while. The hum of the life support continued, but faintly. Mira studied Liam as he worked, his hand steady despite the tension. She admired his focus. Humans, she realized, were more adaptable than her people had ever imagined. You do not give up easily, she said softly. He looked up. You think I should? No, she said, shaking her head. It is just interesting. On Arlen, when a system fails, we wait for help. You try to rebuild it from nothing. He smiled. Waiting never saved a ship. Mira tilted her head slightly. And that is why humans travel farther than any race. Liam didn't answer, but her words warmed him more than the lights. He had never thought of himself as brave, just practical. But maybe that was what bravery really was. The hours moved slowly. The ship creaked around them as if breathing. The emergency clock showed that the storm had weakened, but the main systems were still silent. Liam wondered if the bridge crew was alive. The thought made his stomach tighten. Mira noticed the look on his face. You are worried about them, she said. Yeah, he replied quietly. My team, my friends. I should be out there helping. You will, she said calmly. But for now, staying alive is helping too. He nodded, though the weight in his chest stayed. After some time, Mira stood and walked to the small observation window. Beyond it, space glowed with faint colors, the tail end of the solar storm stretching like ribbons. The sight was beautiful but haunting. Your stars burn brighter than ours, she said softly. Liam joined her. They burn brighter, but they also die faster. She turned toward him. That sounds like humans too. He chuckled quietly. Maybe you're right. They stayed like that for a while, just watching the stars. The tension between them softened into quiet understanding. Suddenly, a low beep broke the silence. Liam turned to the console and frowned. The power from the crystals is running out faster than expected. How much time do we have? Mira asked. Maybe 1 hour, he said. She looked around the lab. There must be another source. The Arlen equipment in storage might hold reserve energy. They searched together, opening small compartments and checking the devices. After several minutes, Mira found a sphere-shaped unit covered with faint markings. This one stores organic charge, she said. It feeds from living tissue. Usually plants, Liam thought for a moment. We don't have plants, but maybe I can connect it to the ship's recycler. He opened the base panel and started linking cables while Mira calibrated the unit. The sphere began to pulse with light, soft and steady. A gentle hum filled the lab again. It's working, she said. Good, he replied, smiling with relief. We just bought ourselves a few more hours. He sat down heavily on the floor, exhausted. Mira joined him, sitting across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Mira said, Do you remember the first day we met? Liam looked up. When my father introduced us. Yeah. You didn't say a word the whole dinner. She gave a small laugh. I was afraid. Humans spoke so fast. I thought I would misunderstand everything. And I thought you didn't like me, he admitted. I did not know how to speak your way, she said. But I watched how you worked. You fixed things even then. It made me curious, he smiled. Guess we've both changed a bit. Yes, she said softly. Now we fix things together. Their laughter echoed in the empty lab, quiet but warm. The sound faded when the hull creaked again. Liam stood up and checked the console. That came from below us. The pressure might be shifting. Mira followed him. Can we stop it? He studied the readings. If we open the access vent and reroute the flow manually, maybe. But it will be hot in there. I will help, she said. Together they opened the floor panel that led to the small vent space. The air inside was heavy with heat. Liam crawled halfway in, tools in hand, while Mira stayed beside him reading the pressure data. Sweat rolled down his face as he tightened bolts and sealed pipes. Now close valve 2, she said. He turned the handle with all his strength. The metal groaned but held. The readings steadied again. Mira smiled. Pressure stable. Liam pulled himself out of the vent, coughing slightly from the heat. She offered him her water bottle again, and he drank gratefully. You're a good partner, he said. So are you, she replied. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard. You know, if we survive this, I might actually listen when you talk about biology, she laughed. And I might let you teach me how to fix a reactor. For a while, the lab felt almost peaceful again. The lights flickered softly. The two of them rested side by side, tired but alive. Then, without warning, a small spark leapt from the console. The screen turned red again. Liam jumped up. What now? The organic unit is overheating, Mira said quickly. If it burns out, the power will fail completely. Liam grabbed his tools again. We can vent the extra energy through the sealing wires. Hold the stabilizer steady. Mira held the sphere while he rerouted the cables. The light grew brighter and brighter until it filled the lab like a small sun. For a second, Liam thought it would explode, but then it dimmed. The hum returned to normal. It worked, she said softly. He sank to the floor, exhausted. I'll take that as a win, she smiled gently. You never stop until the problem is solved. He looked up at her. That's what keeps us human. Outside, the last waves of the solar storm faded into darkness. Inside, the lab glowed softly with renewed light. For now, they had air, power, and a fragile peace. They didn't know what waited beyond the sealed doors, but one thing was clear. Alone or not, they would keep fighting for the ship and for each other. The quiet after the storm felt almost strange. The ship Aurora drifted in the darkness of space, its engines cold and silent. Inside the biolab, the air smelled faintly of metal and warm circuits. The small light still glowed from the crystal jars that Liam and Mira had connected earlier. They had survived the night, but the ship was still in danger. Liam sat on the floor beside the control panel, his eyes half closed. He had not slept much. Every few minutes he would check the oxygen meter and the pressure readings. Each time he hoped to see improvement, but the numbers stayed the same. The power level was dropping again. Mira stood near the window, watching the slow movement of stars. Her glowing eyes reflected the faint light. The ship looks peaceful, she said, but peace in space is never safe. Liam gave a tired smile. You're right. It's too quiet, she turned toward him. Do you think anyone else survived? He hesitated. I don't know. The comms are still down. If the bridge was hit, they might be trapped too. Mira looked at the ceiling as if she could see through the layers of metal. Then we must reach them. Liam shook his head. We can't open the doors without power. The manual locks are sealed. She frowned slightly, thinking. There may be another way. The Arlen once designed a code to start a system when normal power is gone. It uses organic energy mixed with electric charge. My research files might still have it. Liam looked up with sudden interest. You mean a backup code? Yes, she said. It was used on older ships. Dangerous, but possible. He leaned forward. If it can wake the main reactor, then it's worth the risk. Mira moved to the data console and opened her files. The screen flickered, showing lines of Arlen script glowing pale blue. The symbols curved like flowing water, elegant and alive. Liam couldn't read them, but he watched her fingers move quickly across the keys. "This code needs a living link," she explained. "One who holds both kinds of energy, mechanical and organic. It connects through the nervous system and the ship's core together." He frowned. "You mean someone has to link their body to the reactor?" "Yes," she said quietly. "It shares power between the ship and the living source. But if the balance fails, both can be harmed." Liam thought for a moment. "Can you do it?" She looked uncertain. "Maybe. My body can create the organic field. But I cannot control the electric balance alone. A human's touch is needed for that." "Then we do it together," he said simply. She studied him for a moment. "You understand the danger?" He nodded. "If we don't try, we'll all die here anyway." Mira gave a slow nod. "Very well. We must reach the inner conduit under this deck. That is where the power lines meet the core." Liam opened the floor panel again. Beneath it lay a narrow tunnel filled with wires and soft light. The air was warm and dry. He grabbed his toolkit and looked back at her. "Ready?" "As ready as we can be," she said, following him down. The tunnel was narrow, forcing them to crawl on their hands and knees. Sparks still flickered from damaged circuits. Every sound echoed like thunder in the small space. Mira carried a small light sphere that floated beside them, casting blue light across the walls. When they reached the conduit, Liam could see the faint glow of the reactor's energy lines below. It looked like veins of light running through the floor. "This is it," he said. "If we can restart this line, it might wake the rest of the ship." Mira knelt beside him and opened a small crystal case from her belt. Inside were 3 small shards glowing faintly green. "These are Arlen amplifiers. They can carry my field into the system." She placed one shard against the wall. It began to hum softly. Liam connected a wire from the shard to the metal conduit, then linked the other end to his wrist device. The small screen flickered and showed a rising pulse. "It's working," he said. Mira closed her eyes. "Now we synchronize." She pressed her hand against the conduit, her fingers glowing brighter. Liam placed his hand over hers, feeling a faint vibration through the metal. The ship's systems began to respond, small lights blinking one by one. He felt a strange warmth travel up his arm, not painful but powerful. The energy moved through his body like static, then into the reactor lines. Mira's eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the same light. For a moment they were part of the same circuit, human and alien connected through the living energy of the ship. A deep sound filled the tunnel, a slow heartbeat of power. Then the lights flickered across the ceiling. The Aurora was waking up. Liam laughed in relief. "It's working." But the next second the pulse grew too strong. The reactor's power spiked, shaking the floor. Sparks burst from the walls. Mira gasped, pulling back her hand. "The flow is too high." Liam tried to adjust the controls, but his wrist device overloaded and went dark. The glow faded suddenly, then silence. Both of them sat still, breathing hard. The light sphere above them dimmed, then steadied again. Mira checked the readings. The code worked for a moment. The system responded. But the balance broke before full restart. Liam leaned back against the wall. "We were close." "Really close," she nodded. "Yes, we must refine the link." He smiled faintly despite his exhaustion. "You talk like a scientist even when we almost blow up." She looked at him, eyes calm. "You laugh even when we almost fail. That is very human." They shared a small smile, then returned to work. For the next hour they adjusted the wiring and checked the energy paths. Mira suggested using the ship's cooling vents to stabilize the next attempt. Liam rerouted the wires through a secondary relay. When they finished, the system looked more stable. Mira took a deep breath. "We try again?" He nodded. "Let's do it." Once more they placed their hands on the conduit. The light returned, soft at first, then stronger. This time the flow stayed smooth. The hum deepened. The ship vibrated gently as the power moved through the core. Suddenly a new sound echoed from above, a low rumble. The ceiling lights flickered to life. The air systems began to hiss, filling the tunnel with cool air. "It worked," Liam said, almost whispering. "You did it." "No," Mira said. "We did it." They crawled out of the tunnel, their faces lit by the returning lights of the lab. The panels on the walls glowed again and the air felt fresh. For the first time since the storm, the Aurora was alive. Liam checked the main display. Power restored to 40%. That's enough to reach the command bridge. Mira smiled with quiet relief. Then we can find the others, he nodded. Let's move. Before leaving, they packed a few energy cells, a toolkit, and a small water supply. The door panel was still locked, but now it had power. Liam entered the override code, and the metal door slid open with a soft hiss. The corridor outside was dark and smoky, but breathable. The emergency lights painted the walls in dim red. Mira stepped forward carefully. No sound from other decks, she said. Let's check the bridge, Liam replied. They moved together through the narrow passage. The walls bore marks of the storm, burned panels, twisted cables, and shattered glass. The silence of the empty ship was heavy. After a few minutes, they reached the central lift. The doors were jammed. Liam forced them open with a crowbar from his belt. Inside, the elevator shaft stretched upward into shadow. We'll have to climb, he said. Mira looked up. I can help. My gloves can grip the metal, he nodded. I'll follow your lead. She began climbing first, her movement smooth and steady. Liam followed behind, pulling himself up with the cables. The climb was long and silent. Halfway up, he stopped to catch his breath. Remind me next time to build ships with more ladders, he muttered. Mira looked down, a faint smile on her face. Humans always complain during work, he grinned. And we still finish it. They climbed the last few meters and reached the upper deck. The hatch opened with a soft creak. The bridge lay before them, dark but intact. Liam walked to the control seat and powered up the screens. Lines of data appeared slowly. Main systems online. Engines still cold. But we can send a signal. Mira stood beside him, watching the screen. Then let's call for help. He pressed the emergency beacon switch. The signal light blinked 3 times, then began to pulse steadily. Message sent, he said. Now we wait. Mira looked out the wide window. The stars outside looked calm again. You humans never stop trying, she said softly. He smiled. If we stop trying, we stop living. She nodded, her eyes glowing faintly in the returning light. The ship floated silently, its systems humming again, its 2 survivors standing side by side. They had done what no one expected. A human and an Arlen bringing a dead ship back to life with nothing but will and trust. Somewhere far away, the beacon reached open space, calling to anyone who would listen. The Aurora was no longer silent. It was alive, waiting for rescue, carrying the story of 2 who refused to give up. The storm outside the ship had not calmed. The bright waves of light still rolled across the blackness of space, shaking the Aurora from end to end. Every flash of radiation sent new tremors through the hull. Inside the dim biolab, Liam and Mira were almost done linking the hybrid power core. The small generator pulsed with a dull orange glow that came from both human tech and Arlen energy. The plan was working, but the storm had one more strike left. The lights flickered again, and the sound of metal groaning filled the hallways. Liam looked up sharply. That came from Section D, he said. His voice was tense. He knew that part of the ship was close to the outer hull. Mira turned her head toward the sound. Her deep blue eyes narrowed as her hearing caught something Liam could not. Pressure drop, she said. Hull damage nearby. Before Liam could react, the warning siren came alive. A red light flashed on the wall. The calm voice of the ship's AI, still weak but functioning, spoke through the static. Warning. Hull breach detected in Section D corridor. Structural integrity failing. Liam's heart pounded. He knew what that meant. If the breach spread to the lab, they would lose air and be pulled into space. He rushed toward the control console, checking the system. The door seals are damaged. If the pressure loss continues, we'll be exposed in minutes. Mira stepped forward. We need to seal it manually, she said. The automated systems are not strong enough after the power reroute. He nodded. We'll have to go there. The words felt heavy. They had already been through enough danger. But if they did nothing, the ship would tear apart. Mira reached for a mask unit from the emergency kit and handed one to Liam. You lead the repair, she said. I'll stabilize the power levels. They left the biolab together, moving through the narrow corridor that led to Section D. The passage was filled with the smell of burnt circuits and hot metal. The walls were cracked and sparks shot from broken cables. The floor trembled under their boots. When they turned a corner, they saw the damage. A long tear had opened in the wall ahead. A stream of fog-like vapor rushed out, freezing instantly as it met the cold vacuum beyond. Small objects floated in the air, drawn slowly toward the breach. Liam grabbed the handle of the emergency door. We need to close the barrier from the control panel on the other side, he said. It's jammed here. Mira scanned the scene quickly. I can cross, she said. The air is thin but not gone yet. My body can handle it longer than yours. Liam shook his head. No, we do it together. I'll need your strength for the seal. They shared a brief look of trust, then stepped forward. The cold hit instantly. Their breath became white mist. The sound of the escaping air was like a long, sharp hiss. Liam worked quickly to pull the panel cover free while Mira held the bulkhead steady with both hands. Hold it there, he said. Just a few more seconds. She didn't answer, but her glowing veins brightened as she used her inner energy to reinforce her grip. The metal was starting to buckle, but she kept it still. Liam reconnected a few power wires with shaking fingers and pressed the manual override. The red light on the control screen changed to yellow. Come on, he whispered. Just close. The heavy door began to move, sliding across the corridor. It was slow, fighting the pressure difference. Liam's hand slipped once, cutting his palm on a sharp edge. He ignored it and kept working. Finally, the door locked into place. The hiss stopped. The silence that followed was deep and heavy. Liam leaned against the wall, breathing hard. We did it, but Mira didn't relax. Her eyes went toward the reactor status lights on her wristband. No, she said quietly. The reactor is still unstable. The new power link is overheating. Liam turned back toward the biolab entrance. If that blows, the whole ship will go up. They ran back down the corridor. The air felt thick and hot now, filled with the low hum of overcharged circuits. Inside the lab, the hybrid core pulsed wildly. The human half of the generator was sparking, while the Arlen crystal inside glowed bright white. Mira stepped forward at once. The balance is failing, she said. I must release part of my energy or it will burn through. Liam knew that could weaken her. That could drain you completely, he warned. She didn't hesitate. If I don't, it will destroy the ship. She placed her hands on the crystal. Her body began to glow faintly, the light spreading through her skin like running water. The humming sound rose higher and higher. Liam could feel static electricity in the air. He moved to help, adjusting the power conduits and switching off the secondary relays. Come on, hold together, he said under his breath. The core started to stabilize, but a sudden explosion from the left side threw both of them to the floor. A small fire broke out near the control station. Liam's head spun. He heard Mira cough, but she was still moving. He crawled toward the fire extinguisher and sprayed the flames until they were gone. When he turned, he saw Mira on one knee, still touching the core. The light from it had dimmed to a calm blue. The hum slowed to a steady rhythm. It's done, she said weakly. Liam ran to her side and helped her stand. Her energy pattern was faint now, and her eyes looked tired. You saved us, he said. So did you, she replied. Without your system control, the power would have broken me. Before either could rest, another alarm began to ring. The AI's voice returned clearer this time. Attention. Reactor stabilized. Hull pressure restored. Life support at 40%. Liam let out a slow breath of relief. We made it, but Mira looked around. The storm outside is still active, she said. We cannot stay here for long. The radiation will keep hitting until the wave passes. Liam nodded. Then we prepare the emergency pods, just in case. They walked to the hangar bay, stepping over fallen debris. Some panels had come loose, and the smell of burnt plastic filled the air. The pods were still intact, but most systems were offline. Liam checked one of the pods. It'll take hours to restart navigation, he said. Mira placed her hand on the control glass. We may not need to leave, she said. If the hybrid core holds, the ship can protect itself until the storm fades. He looked at her and smiled faintly. You always believe in hope, don't you? Not hope, she said. Logic. You humans call it faith. They returned to the control deck to check final readings. The ship's metal body shook once more, but this time it did not break. Outside, the radiation waves were beginning to thin. The bright flashes faded into softer light. Hours passed in silence as they monitored the systems. Liam's wound had stopped bleeding, but he was exhausted. Mira sat near the viewport, watching the last colors of the storm vanish into space. When calm finally returned, the AI reported the final message. Solar activity decreasing. System stable. You may resume full life support. Liam leaned back in his chair. That's it, he said. We survived the worst. Mira looked at him. We survived together. Her words carried quiet strength. The cold and fear of the last hours began to fade, replaced by a feeling of shared victory. Later, as they walked through the silent corridors, they passed the sealed door of Section D. The metal was scorched, marked by their struggle. Liam paused for a moment and rested his hand on the door. "This ship nearly became our grave," he said softly. "But we kept it alive." Mira placed her hand beside his. "The Aurora lives because humans and Arlen built it together," she said. "That is the lesson we must carry." As they continued down the hallway, small lights flickered back to life one by one. The ship, battered but whole, was breathing again. The storm had tested them, but it had also proven something greater. That courage was not born from one species or one race. It came from those who stood side by side when the universe tried to break them. And somewhere, deep in the dark sea of stars beyond the viewport, the first rays of calm sunlight touched the hull of the Aurora, marking the end of the longest storm they had ever faced. The Aurora floated silently through space. The storm had passed, leaving behind calm darkness scattered with the light of distant stars. The ship was still wounded, but it was alive. Inside, Liam and Mira sat in the control room, watching small systems blink back to life. The lights were dim, the air smelled faintly of burnt metal, and the hum of the repaired reactor was steady and strong. Liam rubbed his tired eyes and leaned back in the chair. "We made it through the storm," he said. His voice was soft but filled with relief. "I didn't think we would see this day." Mira stood beside him, her pale blue skin glowing faintly under the control lights. Her expression was calm, yet there was pride in her tone. "We did not just survive," she said. "We saved this ship. That means others can live too." She walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. The blackness was peaceful now. No more lightning of radiation. No more shaking. Just the endless sea of space stretching forever. Liam joined her and stared out with her. "Do you think anyone out there can hear us?" he asked. Mira nodded slightly. "If our distress signal worked, someone will come," he smiled. "Then we just wait." Hours passed. They worked quietly, checking each system and keeping the ship stable. Liam repaired the air filters while Mira restored the navigation lights. The Aurora felt different now. It was no longer just a broken ship. It was a home they had both fought to protect. Sometimes they talked about simple things. Liam told stories about growing up on Earth, about green fields and the sound of rain. Mira listened with quiet curiosity. She had never seen rain before. Her world was dry and filled with crystal plains. In return, she told him about the Arlen cities under glass domes, where energy lights floated through the air like living fireflies. She spoke of her people's long struggle to understand humans, their fear of how fast humans changed things. Liam listened carefully. "Maybe we just need to learn from each other," he said. "Maybe," she replied. "But that takes trust." They shared a small smile. Trust was something they had built in the hardest way possible. 2 days later, a faint signal reached their console. Liam jumped from his chair. "Wait, I'm picking up something." He turned the receiver. The static cleared and a voice came through the speaker. "This is Rescue Ship Horizon. We received your distress signal from the Aurora. Identify yourself." Liam felt a wave of joy. "This is Liam Reed from the Aurora," he said quickly. "We have 2 survivors. Systems damaged but stable." There was a short pause. Then the voice replied, "Hold position. We are on approach. Estimated arrival in 6 hours." Liam looked at Mira. "They heard us." She nodded, her eyes soft. "Then our part is almost done." But as they waited, a strange quiet settled between them. Both knew this might be the last time they would stand together alone. Mira would likely return to her people, and Liam would go back to the human colonies. The thought made the silence heavier. Liam broke it first. "When we get back, they'll want reports. They'll ask how a human and an Arlen kept a ship alive through a solar storm." Mira smiled faintly. "Tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them it was not just machines or skills. It was 2 people who refused to give up." He nodded. "That's exactly what I'll say." When the rescue ship finally arrived, its bright lights cut through the darkness. The Aurora shook slightly as docking clamps attached. The airlock opened and 3 figures in clean white suits stepped through. "Liam Reed?" the lead officer asked. Liam stood and saluted weakly. "Yes, sir." The officer scanned him quickly, then turned toward Mira. His tone shifted slightly, cautious but respectful. "And you must be Mira of the Arlen Alliance." She inclined her head. "That is correct." The officer looked around the damaged lab and let out a low whistle. You two managed to keep this ship alive in a storm that destroyed 3 cruisers. That's not just luck. That's teamwork, Liam smiled faintly. We had no choice. It was survive or disappear. The rescue team began checking systems, bringing fresh supplies and oxygen. As they worked, the commander spoke privately with both survivors. We'll tow the Aurora back to base, he said. Command will want to debrief both of you. What you've done here is going to be studied for a long time. Mira looked around the ship one last time. This place was almost our tomb, she said quietly. Now it will tell a story. Later, as they prepared to leave the ship, Liam stood by the viewport again. The stars were bright and calm. He remembered every moment of fear, every spark, every sound of breaking metal. Now it all felt distant, like a bad dream that had finally ended. Mira joined him. You will miss this ship, she said softly. He nodded. Yeah, I will. We built something here, something that showed what humans and Arlen can do together. She tilted her head slightly. Maybe this is not the end. Perhaps our people will work together again. I hope so, he said. If they don't, we'll remind them what's possible. When they stepped onto the rescue vessel, Liam looked back one last time. The Aurora floated quietly behind them, its surface scorched and cracked but still glowing with faint lights. It looked tired, like an old warrior resting after battle. During the flight back, both of them were given time to recover. The human and Arlen officers were curious. They asked how they managed the hybrid power core. Liam explained the human engineering part while Mira described her energy fusion. The officers listened carefully, taking notes. One young technician said, If this works on a larger scale, it could change space travel. You might have started something big. Liam smiled. If it helps keep ships alive, then it's worth it. When they reached the joint space station between human and Arlen territories, they were greeted with respect. Scientists and leaders gathered to see the survivors. Cameras floated in the air recording their arrival. The commander introduced them. These two worked together when every system failed. Their actions kept not only themselves alive but also preserved one of the most advanced human Arlen ships in history. The crowd applauded. Liam felt awkward under the attention, but Mira stood tall and calm. Her people's delegation looked at her with pride. During the meeting, both of them told their story. They spoke not as hero and alien, but as partners. Liam described how Mira used her energy to guide the power core. Mira explained how Liam's quick repairs saved her when her strength failed. They talked about how trust grew between them through danger and fear. When they finished, the human leader stood. The lesson is clear, he said. The universe is not conquered by one species alone. It is survived by those who stand together. The room fell silent for a moment, then filled with applause again. Days later, when everything calmed, Liam and Mira met in the observation deck of the station. The stars outside looked the same as before, but both knew they would never see them the same way again. Liam turned to her. Do you think we'll ever go back out there? She looked thoughtful. I think the stars call to those who listen. And you, Liam, will always listen. He laughed softly. And you? I will go where my people need me, she said. But I will remember this. The storm, the ship, and you. They stood in silence for a while. The stars seemed to shimmer a little brighter, as if honoring what they had done. Finally, Mira extended her hand in the Arlen gesture of unity. Liam took it firmly. Until we meet again, she said. Until then, he replied. When she left the deck, Liam remained by the window. The reflection of the stars filled his eyes. Somewhere out there beyond the endless dark, he imagined the Aurora still drifting, a symbol of what humans and Arlen could achieve together. He smiled softly and whispered, Humanity always finds a way. And in that quiet moment, as the station orbited slowly through the piece of space, it felt like the universe itself was listening, not to a hero, not to a survivor, but to a story of two lives that proved courage and unity could shine brighter than any storm.